You'll leave here today with an advanced degree in branding. Our speaker has been a brand strategist, marketing leader, and entrepreneur for the past 20 years. His most recent venture is Damn Right Cocktails, an organic, purpose-driven tequila seltzer. Previously, he led marketing at Tres Agaves Tequila and Margarita Mixers, where he oversaw record sales growth. He has also worked in the B2B space, having held numerous leadership roles worldwide. He and his wonderfully creative wife, Jill, live sandwiched between Brad Davis and yours truly. So let's have a compassionate welcome for Mark Lewis.
Thank you very, very much, buddy. And thank you for inviting me to join you this morning. It's my pleasure to be here. I am going to, if you could enable screen sharing, I'd greatly appreciate it, because I'd like to walk you through a few slides. A lot of times, people go, well, yeah, I have a brand, but sometimes when they talk about brand, they talk about one aspect of what I call branding. And so, and I'm just going to share this screen. So I wanted to really walk through what is, branding, and how do you build a brand strategy? Because there's lots of kind of aspects that go into it. And so really, when people talk about brands, sometimes it's their logo, their advertising, their signage, their customer service, their mission statement. And the thing is that the brand is all of those things. Ultimately, what it is it's the collection of experiences and impressions about your company that exist in the consumer's mind. And so all of those things can create that impression. And ideally, what you get when all of those things are harnessed to a single focus is you make a more powerful impression, because every time your customer engages with you in some way, they are getting that message or that experience that you want them to have. It makes a much more memorable impact. And so you come away with a clearer kind of sense of what this company is, and it actually makes it easier to remember you. There's been a lot of interesting work in recent years on the brain and memory. And essentially what happens when we have a new experience is there is something called an enneagram that's formed, and it basically is a synaptic path. The more that synaptic path gets trodden, the more easy it is to remember your brand, or to remember this memory. So if every time a customer engages with you, they have an experience which is consistent with a certain idea, that synaptic path gets trodden, it becomes easier to remember you. You make a stronger, ideally positive impression. So that person is much more likely to think of you when they need your product or service in mind. This is why companies with strong, valuable brands have a much better balance sheet. They have generally a much higher stock value, not just because it exists in the mind of investors, but because investors know that it exists strongly in the mind of the public. So really, kind of in a way, what we're saying here is a brand is an idea, right? It's the idea about you that you want to have existing in the minds of the public. So what kind of idea, right? It's the idea that allows you to design your entire business around this central concept of who you are. And that means you have to start by defining your why. Okay. And there's a great guy called Simon Sinek. If you haven't read anything about him, he is another brand strategist. And you kind of have to start by asking, and he talks a lot about like knowing your why, right? We're all in business to have a living, right? But really, you need to start by asking yourself, why are you in business? And really great brands exist beyond a desire to make money. They have a bigger mission. On the right is the gentleman, Sam Fleischer, who started OXO. And it started because, he and his wife loved cooking. His wife had mild arthritis and she was getting really frustrated using a potato peeler because it, was hard for her to grip. So he worked with a firm in New York to create these big, large grip kitchen implements, kitchen tools that people with arthritis could actually have. And it really was founded with a purpose. Now, it took off because actually the design was really nice and people of every age, with or without arthritis, found them very, very easy to use. But he had a really distinct goal, right, in what he was doing. Tony Hsieh, who founded Zappos, wanted to make it easier for you to buy shoes, right? Because guess what? Buying shoes online was hard. You really were never sure of the fit. And the problem was, right, that you were, you wouldn't want to risk actually buying the shoes and then having to pay for, to send them back. So he made it easier to do that, right? He was solving a customer problem, right? And ultimately, whether that is and that's a very good place to start, to think about the problem you are solving for customers. Another way to do it, though, is, that doesn't have to be the way. Sometimes you can have a why, which is more about a higher purpose. You want to produce something that is better for people, that is better for the environment, that is better for society. But it does really start with why. And ultimately, right, great brands exist because they resolve a tension, right? Whether it is that tension is because you have a bigger purpose, right? And, people, for example, want more natural products in a particular category and they can't get them. That's still a tension. Or the tension is, I can't hold traditional potato peelers because I've got arthritis, And so this diagram is a great way to start thinking about that. Thinking about in your category, what are the jobs that customers want to do? What are the gains that they're hoping to get? What are the pains that they have? And asking yourself, how am I solving pains or enabling greater gains when I look at that list of customer jobs? Okay. And the way to think about customer jobs is, why is someone hiring your product, right? We don't buy a hammer just because it's a nice thing to have. We buy a hammer to do a job, which is putting a nail in a wall, right? To ultimately hang up a picture frame, build a house, whatever it is. So that's a way to think about the job that ultimately your product has to do. And then you could start to understand the pains and the gains that they have, right? So really, the first question is who, right? And the thing about building a brand is you have to be focused on your customer and really, really understand your customer, right? Who is your current customer? Who should your customer be? Maybe your current customer segment, you've reached the end of the number of those kinds of customers that you can get. And so you have to think about a new segment. Maybe your current customer isn't the most profitable segment in your market. Or you could also think about who is the customer who's not in the market, who's being underserved by the market, who I need to bring in. And it's really important to think about that, because otherwise you can't start asking those questions of the jobs and the pains and the gains. So you really, ultimately, the number one thing that I think companies don't do enough, and that distinguishes great brands from not great brands, is the amount that they invest in understanding the customer, right? It's absolutely key. So once you kind of have identified that customer, right, here are some kinds of questions that you can ask yourself. What is the one thing that your customer couldn't live without accomplishing? What tasks or functional problems are your customers trying to perform in their work or personal life? Thinking about going beyond the functional, think about the emotional. Emotion drives 96% of decisions that we make. And so, if I don't know how many of you have read the book by Dan Ariely, Thinking Fast and Slow, and Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. But he talks a lot in that book about system 1 and system 2. and I'm going to get these mixed up, so because I always forget which one is which, but basically one system is your emotional system that is driven by gut reactions. It's the reptilian aspect of your brain. And the other part is the rational thinking part. And what we know is that most everyday decisions are made by that emotional part, governed by gut reactions. Another interesting, kind of fact is when, there are people who they've done research with who had injuries to their brains through various, accidents or other things that damage the emotional center of their brain. And one of the things they found about those is that those people could line up choices. So if you asked them to choose a doctor, they could line up the different doctors, but they couldn't actually make a decision to choose that doctor. So understanding how you are emotionally connecting with customers is incredibly important. What does your customer want to feel, right? What does your customer need to do to feel this way? How does your customer want to be perceived by others? What can you do to help them be perceived their way? What are the problems that, your customers have, but they may not even be aware of? These are all things that you can get at by spending time talking to your customers, surveying your customers, but really kind of getting to know them on a deeper level. And ultimately come out with the idea of what is the problem you are solving for them. But more than that, right? Oh, well, let me give an example of this first. So Lego found that, they were doing really well against boys, but they were completely missing the $1 billion girl market. And so what they did was they sort of used the process of design thinking, which is really about getting in and understanding your customer, to really deep down understand what girls wanted from play. They use a methodology called cultural anthropology to solve this, which really is about observing and interviewing people in their natural environment. It comes from the study of anthropology. And they spoke to a huge number of people. They took 4 years to do this. They talked to 3,500 girls and their mothers across the world. And they found some really interesting things. Girls like harmony, or a pleasing, everything in its right place sense of order, warm, welcoming colors, precise detailing. They enjoy role playing as their favorite style of play. They do like to build things, but in a style that was very different from what boys like. Boys like to build what they might see on a photo or on a toy box, but girls like to tell stories and redesign the constructions as they created them. Boys played with their figurines in the third person, while girls projected their identity onto the toys. So their result was they built this product called Lego Friends, which sold twice as much as was expected, tripled the number of girls building with Lego bricks. It did get some sexist backlash, but Friends spurred it spurred a 35% profit rise and won the Toy of the Year award. So by understanding their customer, and who they wanted their customer to be, they were able to go out and build a product and service directly for them. Now, Lego is in a certain unique situation because you have to, no one really else is making Lego blocks. That may not be the case with you. So you have to think about, how do you do it better? This job that you are solving for the customer, how are you doing it better, right? Are you resolving it in a way that is better than someone else? Is it, is your service better, because it's better related to customer concerns? Is it about personal service? It can be about lower price. Let's face it, look at Geico. Geico is a company founded on a low price promise. Now they do it and they execute it in a very amusing way. And we'll talk about that later. Or are you offering a better experience? So, you can solve a job, and sometimes in some categories, there are no hidden gains and pains that other people aren't solving. So you have to think about, how am I solving it in a better way than other people? You also have to think about broader kind of culture, and think about what is going on in the world around me, right? That I can leverage, right, to my advantage. What is changing in our broader culture to ultimately, drive people? So a couple of things that just exist in the world today that I think will continue to be important for years to come. Personalization, I think, is something that we're not quite expecting, but we want it. We're seeing it a lot more of it, you know, where you can design your own, you know, Nike sneakers. You can, you know, get your own DNA tested and ultimately probably be able to get medication that's personalized for you. Personalization is something that people crave because it's something that fits their need more exactly, or it makes them feel more special. You know, authenticity is something that people are demanding more and more of. They want companies to, you know, they want to understand where the products they're consuming come from. They want to understand the, if you will, the reason why companies are doing things. And they're increasingly looking to smaller brands because they feel those kinds of brands have more authenticity. There's been a huge rise in, you know, interest in bespoke manufacturers. Thinking just about, for example, the alcohol business, which I'm in, the rise in interest among small batch producers is absolutely incredible. Or think about beer and the interest in smaller beer brands. So that's something that people are seeking. People are seeking deeper forms of engagement, right? I think there's been a little bit of a backlash, if you will, against, you know, some aspects of social media, not just because of all the things going on in the political world, but I think people are looking to go beyond surface level engagement with other people and build deeper relationships. Fighting against that, though, is you know, time. And people are always stretched for time. Technology helps them with that, but there's a love-hate relationship with that technology, as I'm sure you can acknowledge. So, and there are many more things that we could talk about, but tying into something bigger than just what exists in your category is incredibly important. You know, and then again, thinking about like how, you know, ultimately, am I different, right? Is my experience different? Do people care why I'm different? What would my competitor, you know, do to be different than me? Thinking about those things is incredibly important, so that ultimately your brand idea exists at that section of the consumer, the culture, and competition, right? What are my competitors doing? How do I, you know, what are they doing wrong? How does it fit with what the consumer wants? And how does it tie into something bigger than myself to get you to an intersection? You know, one other aspect to layer on, you have to think about your brand's personality, which is, I can solve a problem, right? But how do I, how do I actually present myself to the world? And sometimes it comes as a part of the problem you're solving, right? But even then, you can approach things in different ways. So for example, you might be a financial advisor, right? And the way that you want to present yourself is very much as someone who provides mastery of a world which is mystical to a lot of people, right? Or you might want to provide the kind of experience which makes people feel safe and caring. And you would present yourself to the world in two very different ways. And I find that something that's very useful for looking at this is actually a tool from psychology, from Jung, who created the idea of archetypes. And archetypes are really a way to think about them is the traditional characters in stories that we had growing up that, you know, are kind of norms for the roles kind of people can play in the world. And there are different types. The most well-known one is the idea of the hero, right? And I think, you know, we talk about the idea of the hero's journey in narrative, where the hero, you know, struggles with some kind of tension, but ultimately overcomes it through their mastery. There's also the magician, the idea of someone who has a kind of power over something and can create change. There's also the outlaw or the rebel who seeks to liberate you. On the other side, right, there's also the innocent, right? Someone who provides safety and haven, or the sage, someone who provides knowledge. And so if you look at this diagram, it's interesting to think about what is it that your brand, you know, that people are wanting to do, and what kind of role your brand can play, and what kind of personality you want to have, right? So do you want to be someone who's about providing pleasure to others, or someone who is about providing mastery? Because those two ways of going to market and presenting yourself are very, very different. You know, part of then that is translating it to how you execute all of this, right? You have an idea, a concept, you have a personality. What does that mean? Translate that down into values and behavior for you and your staff. And what does this mean in terms of customer service? What's our return policy, right? What's our pricing? What's our product assortment? How do I train my staff? What's my visual identity? What you do as a brand, I think people like to think about branding a lot in terms of advertising. And certainly that's an important way to get your message out. But it's really more in what you do than what you say that your brand comes to life. So I think one thing that's important is asking, what is your, how do I translate this down to a set of behaviors that we are going to do as a company, as a team, so that when people come and engage with my staff, my product, we are going to get that consistent experience. And really it can go, around, an entire kind of continuum of things from, and just this little kind of wheel is a useful thing, everything from communication, your website, social media, to your corporate culture, to your customer experience, to your reputation, to your visual design, right? Your, brick and mortar presence, to the actual product experience itself. Now, this is not a simple process. You spend a lot of time in here, right? And if you think about kind of some of the phases you go through, you've got to understand and observe first. This is where it gets really messy, right? You've got to look for patterns and insights. Then you get an idea and you figure out how to prototype it and test it, and then you can go into executing it. So, I recognize that I'm giving a very broad overview of this. But when you do it, expect it to be messy. It's not easy. So just, as a case study, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the company that I'm starting, because we are in effect building a brand from the ground up. And as Buddy mentioned, my most recent work experience was running Tres Agaves tequila and margarita mixes, running marketing for them. And so, I came out of there wanting to still be in the tequila space, but, recognizing a couple of things, about our audience. And so, our audience is particularly focused on millennial women. And one thing that is going on with millennial women is that they are looking for healthier ways to drink alcohol. They are going into, there is a large number of people going into lower calorie, lower percent alcohol drinks. And this is why the hard seltzer market has taken off. Now, these are people, we look at them, they care about food quality, right? 80% say food quality is a priority for them. As I said, they're increasingly health focused. 60% of millennials think their generation is more focused on health than any other. 50% buy more organic products than they did 5 years ago. And they're socially conscious and outspoken, right? They want their brands, the brands they engage with, to stand for something, particularly a cause, to give back, not to be more than a product. And so when we looked at the market and we looked at these people, we realized a couple of things. There are other tequila seltzers out there, but it's fragmented. It's got low innovation and poor quality, and it's not meeting what these women wanted, right? These are consumers who are willing to spend more on premium spirits, right? They want high quality, a high quality product, and they're not getting it, right? They just don't like what's out there. And that's a lot of it is because they're using a lower quality tequila. There's also no other people in the market who are organic. There's also no other people in the market who are cause-based. And so the way we've built our brand, right, is this idea, of, can you have a great drink and contribute better to society? Damn right you can. So, I'll just read this out. This is our kind of brand statement. Damn right is a tequila-based hard seltzer made with 100% de agave tequila, 5% ABV and under 100 calories. And because we care about you and the planet, it's also certified organic and contains all natural ingredients. And when you drink Damn Right, you also do right, because up to 5% of our profits go to making the world a fairer place. Our donations are given to programs and charities who create equal access to education and opportunity. And so our tagline is really simple. It's drink right, do right, damn right. The problem, if you will, with Resolving is we're giving you a higher quality, healthier drink that's also something that gives back to society. So I'm going to, and so it's really looking at those sort of what the competition was or wasn't doing, what was happening in culture and what was happening with our consumer, right? And bringing those three together to make a real brand experience. So I'm going to pause there, and I would love to welcome any questions that you guys have. Yes, that would be, please, I don't know how you guys do questions on here, but happy to answer any.
Yeah, if you want to ask Mark a question, please either raise your hand or unmute yourself. I see Tom Guyette has a question. Please unmute yourself, Tom.
Hi, Mark. Quick question for you. You came to a Rotary Club today, so I presume you thought about the Rotary brand before you came. And so what I'd like to know is, what do you think Rotary is doing well with the brand, and where do you think we could do better?
I think that what not enough people, I think one thing that I find very powerful about Rotary is the charitable work that Rotary does. Recently, I actually had the opportunity to go on a mission to Kenya to help build sand dams there. And sand dams are a great way for people in dry countries to, get a more consistent source of clean water. And a huge amount of funding for that goes to Rotary. And I don't think I realized how much work Rotary does in giving back to the community. And I think that, it's viewed as a communal society, places where we can, you can learn and, meet people in business. But I don't think it gets the recognition it deserves for some of the kinds of work that you guys were talking about earlier in this meeting of your work in Guatemala. Not enough people in the community know that. And I think promoting that aspect of your brand would, I think, draw more people to it. So yes, that is that is what I would say.
Okay, I do have one more question.
Absolutely.
So I have an internal reputation here as being the logo police. I live up to it. I actually came from a company where image and logo and all that was extremely important, and it's kind of carried forward to my Rotary life. But one of the challenges we've had is that about 8 years ago, Rotary spent about $30 million to kind of ask all those questions you were talking about. And they came up with new logos and a whole lot of other things that was to really designed to recruit younger members into the organization and do many other things. But one of the challenges we've had is people love the old stuff and they won't give it up, or they don't care. There's a lot of I don't care. So for those people that say I don't care about the logo, what do you tell them? How important is it?
I think I think that the logo is as the most frequently used representation of your brand. Okay, and if you have a visual identity which doesn't gel with your consumer, your targeted consumer. So if you have a mission, right, to actually recruit younger people into Rotary, and that logo and identity doesn't gel with it, you have a problem, right? Now, look, as I was saying, it's not just about the logo, it's about the website and all these other things. So I do think it's important, but I think what you're saying is another thing. Is one of the hardest things when you're in a corporation is to get everyone to buy into your new branding, right? And helping, and you have to do a big sales job to get people to, use that logo, use that identity, and help them understand why it's important, right? At Clarity Insights, I changed the company's name from Clarity Solution Group to Clarity Insights with the support of the executive team. Changed the website, changed the logo, did everything. A lot of my time was selling that in and getting people to realize why it was important.
It's about change management.
It's definitely about change management. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Scott Parsons, did you have a question?
I do. Are you able to hear me? Because I just lost the screen.
Yes,
we can
I'm
hear
able
you.
to hear you.
Oh, okay, great. I'm curious. Excellent presentation, by the way. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Have you ever had to pursue rebranding in kind of a crisis situation, such as like a Boeing situation, losing 2 aircraft to crashes or things of that nature? And how did you go about it, if you did?
I've not had to handle, I think, crisis situation in that sense, I have to say. I think when 9/11 happened, I was working in advertising in New York, and one of our clients was Liberty Mutual. And so we had to work very quickly to get messages out to people in a crisis. But I have dealt with situations where there is misperception, though. So, for example, I worked for a company called a brand called Soyjoy, which was a soy-based snack bar that was very big in Japan. They wanted to bring it to the United States. And one of the challenges that we had, there was a negative perception about soy. There was a lot of negativity about soy causing cancer online. And so we had to find a way to actually correct and get the right information out there. That's a different kind of campaign from a branding perspective. I think if you think about the Boeing situation, I think they demanded, that brand kind of needed to have more transparency and authenticity, right? The most important thing for a brand in crisis is to be honest, to not obfuscate, to be open and transparent, to take feedback and listen, and to communicate how change is happening, to resolve problems. The classic case is Tylenol. When Tylenol, if we all recall, Tylenol had a crisis because there was some lunatic who was putting poison in Tylenol. Tylenol voluntarily took all Tylenol off the shelf, and they over-communicated about what they were doing. They didn't try and sweep the problem under the carpet. That won that brand huge plaudits. So hopefully that answers your question, even though I don't have direct experience in this.
Thank you very much.
Skip McCowan.
Yes, Mark, your presentation where you talked about the company you're working on now, where 5% of the profits could be donated to charitable causes. That's an amazingly high percentage. It seems to me, I've heard of other companies that donate 1%. Talk to us a little bit about how the company came up with that high a percentage. And then also, just my observation is when I see that really makes a difference to me. I think of the Bombas sock commercials where they say for every pair of socks we sell, we are going to donate a pair to a homeless person. And that's an amazing concept. And it just gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling about the company. Talk to us about that and how important that is.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's incredibly important. I wanted to start a business with my business partner as well. I wanted to start a business where I was able to give back. I felt like I'd been working a lot of products that they weren't causing anyone any harm, but they weren't solving the world's problems. And it was really important for me to work on something that gave back to the world. And I think it's, as I was saying, it's something that people, especially young people really of any age, do look for. They want companies to do more, right? Show me you're actually not just making money off me, but you're trying to help make the world a better place. So for me, it was incredibly important. And education is something I'm very passionate about. I think, we have a problem in this country where education is kind of a lottery, a zip code lottery, right? Because poorer neighborhoods generate less tax revenue and are able to invest less in schools and teachers, right? Despite, it's even a state lottery because, different states have different, revenue. We're very fortunate in California to be a relatively wealthy state, but not so much in other places like Wyoming. And the quality of education suffers. So for us, it was something my business partner and I are both very passionate about. So we'd love to, that's something that we cared about, and we wanted to make a significant contribution, right? We can't, sell one, donate one model is a very good one for companies because it actually allows them to get scale, in production. We can't really do that with alcohol. That's the only problem. It doesn't sit very well with people to give, alcohol to teachers, but so that's why we're doing it. But yeah, I think it is very important.
Frank Dunn, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was interested in your thoughts on the future of your industry. When you pick up a magazine and you look at a drug ad, on the ad itself, it tells you it's going to cure everything. And then you got 2 pages of disclaimers after it. And the same thing more and more with different advertising and different mediums. There's more and more disclaimers causing people to be, more and more skeptical about advertising. This morning on CNBC, the president of AT&T was talking about the future of streaming and what his companies are going to do. And when the program has no advertising, that's fine. But then he said he's giving his customers more and more, and they're accepting it more and more, the fact that they will pay a premium to not have to watch ads. Mm-hmm. And I find myself, if it's a sporting event I want to watch, I will tape it and then catch up an hour later so I can zoom through the commercials. And I'm just wondering where all this is going for you.
No, definitely a very good question. And I think that, the advent of the DVR and skipping commercials is something that is a very big challenge for advertisers, because, we had this unwritten rule, which is we pay, you don't pay to watch network television, and you watch ads instead. It's the same with newspaper content. You don't pay to watch content, you get content for free if you watch the ads. So the advent of paywalls and the successful introduction, for example, of the New York Times paywall creates really big issues for advertisers who want to kind of do that. And it means that they have to rethink how they get their message out there. And a lot of that is about producing content, branded content that people want to engage with. So BMW was one of the first people to do this years ago. They created 7 films, which people actually, which featured BMW cars. And that was something people actively wanted to engage with. Creating content, right, for example, about drugs, conditions, something that drug companies are doing. People have always been cynical about advertising. And actually, if going back to when I started in the industry, you couldn't advertise drugs. You just weren't allowed to do it. It was very, very limited. And the reason why you have so many, 2 pages of conditions and warnings is because that's what the FDA makes you do in return for being able to advertise. So there's always a balance. And I think what it means is that we're going to move towards more of a, there will still be advertising in places, but we're going to move towards more of a branded content type model. And this is what we're seeing with social media anyway. So yes.
So thanks for that. Fred Stambaugh.
Yes, good morning, Mark. Very nice presentation. My question was sparked when I saw your slide about engaging with the culture. Obviously, right now, we live in very, very contentious times, and it seems that we're seeing some mature corporations, very large corporations, who seem to have decided it's worth pissing off half of their customer base by taking a stand that is favored by the other half of their customer base. And I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
So I'm someone who is a big advocate of a brand having a point of view. Like, if you don't have a point of view on the world, you won't stand out. Now, that point of view does not need to be political, right? Patagonia has a strong point of view about the world, about the environment, and it lives that value. It lives those values, right? And it's not afraid of putting that out there, right? And it's in every kind of thing. So to me, I think, having a point of view is good. It's up for the company to decide whether they want or need that to be political, right? It reverberates beyond just simply their customer, right? It can be incredibly important for a company's internal culture and its ability to attract and retain its employees to take a political stance on something. I also think that marketing is the art of sacrifice. You can't be all things to all people, right? If your customer base leans a certain way politically, and you know that, your risk of actually pissing off those other people is minimal. So I think that it's something that has to be carefully weighed, absolutely. But I think that there can be some very good reasons for doing it. It's up to each individual brand to figure that out.